G'day, guys. Welcome back to another episode of the CoolDadCollective podcast, the podcast that is for dads by a dad, talking everything there is to talk about fatherhood, the ups and downs, the trials, the tribulations, and everything in between. And my God, we've got some catching up to do on the week that was. Last week, I say the jumping straight out. I'll ease in because this is my third attempt actually at starting the podcast because literally just before hung all the washing out and then a giant gust of wind came through and just completely, pile drived my whitewash onto the floor, which is, really great considering it's all the white clothes. But hey, we're prospering, we're going on. And as I said, the last few weeks have been a very big event in our family. So I'll run you through essentially from the start. And I think this is important to go through because I feel like my experience, and I always try to pride myself on the fact that this podcast is, about my journey. And if my journey can help others, then that is the best thing humanly possible because we're all dads. We're all trying to do the right thing. We're all just trying to get by. We're all just trying to, navigate this insane journey that we're on and just trying to survive and take care of the family. So starting off with Skylar. Skylar was sick about 3 weeks ago. Nothing too crazy. She ended up having influenza A, so essentially just the flu. And, we took her to the doctor. Doctor's like, yeah, no dramas, it's the flu. Put her on antibiotics, no dramas. All good. No dramas at all. But then we started to notice that Summer, who's my youngest, who's 2, she's only very little, she started exhibiting flu-like symptoms as well. So, of course, once Skylar got a little bit better, she sort of kicked up as well and got sick. So then we decided to take Summer to the doctor. And, of course, the doctor was like, I think it's influenza A. It would make so much sense considering Skylar just had it. They're both at kindy. It's going around at the moment. It's probably that. So we took that on board. We were like, yep, no dramas. We'll put her on the same antibiotics. Well, I didn't obviously say that because I'm not a doctor. But the doctor said, yep, no dramas. We'll put her on the same antibiotics. So Skylar got better pretty quickly. She got better within about 3 days. So, and we thought with Summer, because she's only little, it might take a little bit longer. Anyway, 5 days goes past. Summer has not made any progress, almost zilch, zero, no progress at all. And we started to wonder, okay, maybe this isn't the flu. Skylar's went away pretty quickly and we're doing the exact same thing to Summer. And, we're keeping her home, we're keeping her warm, we're making sure she doesn't do anything crazy because she's the psycho, one of the two of them. And like I said, a week goes past and she's still not getting better. So we took her back to the doctor and the doctor said, look, she's got a history. She's had pneumonia before. It could be she's got pneumonia again. And we're thinking, oh, fuck, again, this can't be good. But at the same time, we were like, sweet, okay, well, we know how to deal with this. Same sort of situation, different antibiotics, which, as a parent, you never want to continuously have your kids on antibiotics. There's a lot of research around the gut biome and what it does to what antibiotics does. And, we try really, really hard that's the last resort. We really don't want to do it, but, it has worked in the past. So we thought, why change it? It worked. Let's do it again. Summer then just didn't get better. And in fact, she got substantially worse to a point where she wasn't eating, she wasn't drinking. And I think as a parent, your kids are pretty resilient and you tend to know based on their actions how they're feeling. As parents, each kid is different, but how your kid reacts when they're sick. And Summer was getting really sick and she was getting to a point where she was just low on energy. She was very lethargic, which is really weird for her because she is a bit of a crazy one. So one night we noticed that her breathing, she ended up being in what's known as respiratory distress. So if anyone doesn't know what respiratory distress is, and for those new parents out there, babies, when they breathe and they're trying to get as much oxygen into their lungs as humanly possible, you'll notice that it's not their chest, it's actually their stomach that puffs out and then goes in. And the more it's puffing out and sucking in is the more they're trying to get oxygen into their body, which, being a human, we all need oxygen to breathe and their lungs are very, very small. So lucky enough, Kia, being in the healthcare industry, she had an oxygen reader, the thing you put on your finger. So we put that on her and she was reading 92, which is, they should never be at 92. You should never have 92% of oxygen unless you sleep. I don't know. I'm not an expert in this, but this is what I've been told. So we panicked a little bit and we just took her to the hospital and, got to the hospital, did the x-ray, which, even still with little kids, you don't want to get them x-rayed all the time because there's dangers in that as well. So got them x-rayed and they said that they could see particles on her lungs and said it was typical that it was probably pneumonia. So had her checked in hospital. We got her, I wouldn't say stable, but we got her to a point where, the hospital was more than happy to say, yep, you can deal with this at home. So we took her home. So that was night number 1. Now, we continued with the antibiotics and went to the doctor again, and they were all, and it's not their fault, okay? I want to preface this. This is not a fault on any doctor. When you're dealing with kids, and especially infants, like really young kids, 2, it is so hard to tell what is wrong. They can't talk. You have to base it on their actions. And then, all the protocol around identifying these things involve x-rays, which you don't want to continuously be x-raying your kids. So for all we knew, she had pneumonia. Now, a day went past. She was okay, still not herself. We figured she wouldn't be herself for a little bit. Then that's where it got a little bit scary. So we got to a point where, and we were all sort of piled into the living room. We got to a point where the house was a mess because we were off work, on work, trying to work out and navigate that, which is just an intense issue in itself when you got 2 working parents and they couldn't go to kindy. And mind you, this is still why Skylar is still a little bit sick. So we decided, if Summer's home, we may as well keep them both home. So one night, probably got to about 12 a.m. and Kia sort of, got up and was like, Summer's still in respiratory distress. Like a little side hack here for parents. And if you don't do this, I strongly advocate that you do it because we never really think to do these things when our kids are well. And then when they get sick, we have nothing to compare it with. So if your child is asleep and you want to, and they're breathing, they're healthy, whatever, just take a video of their stomach, okay? Because if they're breathing well, you'll notice their stomach isn't moving as much. So if you have a video of your kid breathing when they're, when they're full health, you've got something to compare it to. So Kia's obviously got that on her phone and she was showing me a comparison between when she was healthy and when she was in a bit of distress. And I'm talking like this time around when Kia showed me, Summer was in intense distress. Like it was to a point where she was limp. She wasn't moving that much. You'd pick her up and, when you pick her up and she's asleep, usually they wake up and start crying and wriggling around. Summer wasn't doing that. So we decided, no, we're going back to the hospital. So went to the hospital and when we got in there, we sort of told them what had happened and what the go was and all that sort of jazz. And they were still uncertain about the pneumonia. They said that the symptoms were typical of pneumonia. However, it could be something else. So, and likewise, another little sick kid hack. If you ever go to the hospital, hospitals always have a rotating roster of doctors, especially in emergency. So if an emergency happens, you may lose the doctor you're working with and get a new one. And it is increasingly difficult, especially when you're stressed, to relay what the previous doctor said to catch up the new doctor. And I know there's protocols in hospital where there's notes and things like that. But what I would say to you and what we were doing is Kia was taking notes every time a doctor would come in, and even to a point where, and I'm not sure about whether you should do this or whatever, and we didn't do it because Kia is very quick at taking notes because that's what she does for a job. But even just recording what the doctor is saying so that when the next doctor comes in, not as like a haha gotcha, like this guy said this, but if you can play back what the doctor said to the next doctor, they can pick it up way quicker than if you're someone who's not in the medical industry, which I'm not. Okay, so if it was just me, this would be perfect for me. You can replay it back to the doctor and they will have a much better idea of what the previous doctor has said. And it just makes for a little bit more consistency, I found. And I have a lot of parents that have hit me up during that time and said that's what they do. And I will say that I think it's a fantastic idea, and just to help the doctors as well, because they're there to help your kid. Like the thing I learned being in hospital so much is those nurses and doctors are unbelievable people. Like they have so many kids to deal with. They see the craziest things every day, and yet they're so well trained and have the peace of mind to stay calm even when the parents are losing it a bit. So big shout out to the doctors and nurses at the Children's Hospital. So, and they went in and, they said, look, it might be an idea to put her on an inhaler. So, and she's had an inhaler before. Well, Skylar has, because Skylar gets croup fairly frequently because, as a kid, I got it as well. But yeah, so they said, we'll put her on an inhaler. And anyway, went through the same process. Oxygen was dropping up, and there was at the point where I posted on Instagram where we had no answers. And I think the scary thing is when your kid's in hospital is not the fact that your kid's in hospital. It's the fact that it's so uncertain about what is wrong. And when you've got doctors coming in and being like, I think it could be this, but it could also be this, it's not reassuring for you at all. So the whole idea is like, you just want answers. You just want to know what is the problem and how can we fix it? So it ended up that Summer, and it's a very common issue, and the only downside to it being a common issue is it's very hard to pick up because it could be the symptoms are very similar to so many different things. So Summer, we were told that Summer has what's known as RAD, which is Reactive Airways Disease. And I know when I heard that, I was like, what is this? I heard the word disease and I thought, oh shit, like what are we dealing with here? The nurses were really good at explaining, look, RAD is simply just infant asthma. So she has airways that are reactant to pollen and, smoke, dust, all those different things. And of course, but with it being cold weather, very windy, it's fully likely that it was reacting and that was making Summer not breathe very well. So we put her on a little puffer, and they sent us home. And then we went back. Because once again, Summer was not doing well again. So we were really scared, I think, is the big thing. And, when you explain it now, and in hindsight, it's a beautiful thing because you look at it and like, oh man, I can't believe I was so worried. But in the moment when you don't know what this thing is, we've never experienced it before, the asthma thing, maybe I had some respiratory issues when I was a kid, and Kia had asthma when she was a kid, but nothing to the extent of this young. So we ended up going to a specialist. It was a respiratory specialist, and went through, once again, relayed all the information that we had about Summer and the way she's acting, she's not eating, blah, blah, blah. And we got put on something that was called a preventer. And it's very common. Likewise, someone might be listening to this and be like, I went through the exact same situation. Does not take the fear out of it being that it's just asthma. When I heard it was just asthma, I kind of got a little bit relieved. But they still said, look, it's still dangerous because she's so young. Now, after we went to the respiratory specialist, and this is where things turned for the better. So it does end well, and besides all the stress and all that sort of jazz, we went and saw the respiratory specialist, and she put Summer on a preventer. Now, she has a preventer in the mornings and in the afternoon. She has 2 puffs in the morning, 2 puffs in the afternoon. I'm not lying. I am not lying when I tell you after 2 days of being on this preventer, Summer did a full 360. Like, I'm talking everything. I'm talking eating, drinking, breathing, everything cleared up. As soon as we got the medication that she needed, it cleared up immediately. So I guess the moral of this is, if you're feeling stressed about these things, it is completely normal because we have no idea what's going on. And when your kids are so young, all you worry about is something happening to them. And there was obviously tears with Kia and I, and it's always hard. Usually we sort of have if I'm struggling, Kia's usually the one that motors through, and then it's vice versa. And we always sort of have like one parent that's sort of got it together. It's probably the first time ever that we both sat in the living room one time, and I started, I guess, breaking down a little bit because I was so worried. I was like, I think I mentioned to Kia that I'm worried we're going to lose her. And I think that was how I was feeling at the time, but it wasn't the best way to sort of, I guess, say that to Kia, because Kia was the one that was sort of leading it and being like, no, we need to do this, we need to do this. And the moment I said that, it sort of broke her a little bit, which broke me even more. And we ended up having a night where we were just sobbing in the lounge room with Summer in our arms. And that was a terrifying night. And I think back to it now, and I hated everything about that night, and you take into consideration we were lacking sleep. I think we both slept about 3-4 hours in 48 hours, which is insane. And we're all trying to navigate like all these medications and all these notes and all these, what the doctors are telling us. And it was incredibly hard. But as I said, the story did end well, and Summer made a massive turnaround. And when I say a massive turnaround, I've mentioned it before on the podcast. Summer has really bad sleep issues, and we were going to go to a sleep specialist and do all that and do the Ellen Barron like sleep study thing. And, you know, it could have been an adenoid issue as to why she's not sleeping. She's been on this preventer, and she's gone from waking up 6-7 times a night to maybe waking up once, maybe. And it's just crazy how all this stuff we went through, all these things around her sleep, but the one of the reasons why she wasn't sleeping was because she couldn't breathe properly, which is insane, because it's something that we didn't know about and something we didn't even think about, because there's all these other things that are common reasons why kids don't sleep. And I guess it's another sort of point to know that, like, you know your kids so well, like even from such a young age, you're with them all the time. You know when they're not feeling the best. You know when something's not right. You know when they're not themselves, and you know when there's an issue. And it's very hard to communicate that with people who don't know your kids. You know, even asking my parents and kids' parents, like, there's times where they're like, oh, you know, you went through something like this. I feel like, you know, you just rested it out and you were fine. But you know in your head, you're like, okay, but I feel like that's not the thing with now. Like it feels like it's different. So yeah, as I said, it was a very stressful week, and it was a tough week, and I'm very grateful and happy that we got through it. And I guess being in the hospital really put a lot of things in perspective for me with, you know, no matter how bad, like the hardest thing you've ever been through is the hardest thing you've ever been through. The washing's gone again. Is the hardest thing you've ever been through. And for me, that was the hardest thing. But being in a hospital, like seeing so many parents in the children's hospital that had it so much worse, it really put things in perspective that, you know, we all have our individual battles, no matter how hard they are. And I hate saying, like, there's always someone worse off than you, because that doesn't help. That never helps. Like, you know, the way you feel about a situation doesn't get helped by being like, oh, you know, there's people doing worse than me. It's bullshit, right? But seeing some other parents and how resilient they were in the hospital when they're dealing with things like childhood cancer and things like that, and ongoing health issues. And just, I had a chat with a dad in the break room, and I wasn't going to talk about this, but I feel like I should. And his daughter had cancer, and his daughter was about 6 years old. And I was, you know, having a little bit of a chat to him and just general chit chat. And he said to me, he's like, look, man, you just got to deal with the cards that have been played to you. And I was just like, dude, that's crazy. I'm sitting in this break room, or this, you know, parents' room, trying not to cry, and you're sitting there with like the strongest attitude ever, and you are dealing with the most insane situation that you could possibly put in. And I never got his name. I probably will never see him again, but that dude is going to live in my head for so long with what he's dealing with. So, you know, I guess moral of the story is, you know your kids, you know when there's something not right. And you also know, you don't know, but the worst thing that's going on for you is the worst thing that's happening in the world at that point in time. And it's okay. You know, you never have to think that, oh, but someone's doing it worse than me, right? And I know, because there always is people doing it worse. No matter what situation that you're in, there's probably someone doing it worse. But thinking that is not going to help you. You just have to feel, I guess, sit in the emotions that you have and understand that, yeah, this is probably the hardest thing you've had to deal with. And it's going to affect you in ways that you don't feel like you understand. You may get emotions. Like some of the emotions I was feeling, I was like, I've never felt scared like that in so long. Like it took me back to almost like a childhood feeling of fear, of being helpless. And being helpless, I think, is the worst feeling that you can feel, when you feel like no matter what you do, nothing is going to help that situation. And that sucks. So if you're ever in that situation, don't ever feel like, oh, there's someone doing it worse than me, because that's not going to help you. Just understand that the situation you have is probably a tough one for you, but always be like, look, I'm going to try my best to keep my head here. I'm going to try my best to work as hard as I can and sit in the present and be like, what can I do right now? What is in my circle of control right now? If in my circle of control is sitting with my daughter and just giving her a hug or talking to her, the best thing that I can do right now. And that's the thing you need to focus on. So it was a tough week, But that's parenting. That is parenting. And I would be lying to you if I said, oh, parenting is just so great. It's the best thing ever. Sometimes parenting is the toughest thing mentally that you can do, because there's so many things that you worry about, and there's so many things that you read and stress about. You know, even all this stuff, I'm not going to talk about it too much, but the stuff with the childcare teacher that in Melbourne, and you know, just the feeling that those parents must have had when they are thinking like, oh, I left my kid here, like this was me. It's so shit. So as much as I like to advocate that parenting is great, parenting is fucking hard, and it's really does a fucking number on your psyche sometimes. And you know, it comes back to just trying to take care of yourself as well. You know, take the load off your back sometimes. Have a chat to someone. You know, I always advocate, go see a psychologist. Don't go see a fucking coach or some spiritual. No, don't do that, okay? They're just going to steal your money. Go see a proper person and you know, talk through some things. You may feel like you don't have anything going on or nothing to talk about, but more often than not, getting it off your chest and talking about it, and I guess, like, you know, working through it and breaking it down makes it so much easier. So yeah, a bit of a catch-up episode this week. I just wanted to get on and chat mostly about my experience, because, you know, those little hacks around the breathing videos and even down to the recording and making sure you are aware of the doctor's notes, even if you don't understand them, so you can relay them to other doctors, it helps massively. Like being, and it's something as dads, you know, it's come a long way. Now I think dads, you know, we do get a lot involved in the medical side of our kids and understanding like what medications are on, all that typically, you know, I know for my family, it was always my mum's sort of thing. But I think it's so important to have both parents be very well aware of what's going on and the medical history of their kids. So if you feel like you don't know as much, like I really push and advocate for you to try your best to brush up on your kids' medical history and understand. So when people ask you, you know what's going on. You don't have to be like, oh, let me just check with my wife. No, your kids, you should know. Okay. So, and I'm not saying that in an angry way. I'm saying it as like empower yourself. You know, the biggest thing around this podcast is empowering dads to do, you know, not just be working dads, but be like the nurturing, caring dad that I think a lot of us growing up, and we probably didn't have that side of our dads. So yeah, but you know, we're pushing on, and it's a weird segue to get into, but you know, it is what it is. But you know, that's the catch-up episode, guys. I really appreciate it, and I really hope maybe my experience has helped you in one way or another. We got a lot of cool stuff coming up. I'm very excited. A lot of cool interviews being scheduled. Things are very busy, and I'm trying to keep up on emails and stuff like that. So we've got a lot of things going on. The doco, the Keep Showing Up documentary, we've got some great episodes coming. It's being a bit delayed. I wanted it out by mid-year, but I know... I don't know. I didn't realize how much this actually would take up in terms of time, and I want to give something, and Patty as well, we want to present something that is something that's going to be really lasting and something that's going to hopefully blossom into something even bigger. So there's that. If you're looking at all my ballin' tees, these are paid in full, okay? If your mates are doing cool stuff, you know, don't ask for handouts. Go buy some of their stuff, support what they're doing, and I know Dom from Ballin's doing amazing stuff. But yeah, he just had a sale on all these jerseys, and he's got the golfing range coming out very soon, which I'm very excited about, because I need a little bit of kit, a little bit of drip for my irregular golfing days. But yeah, go get around them, and yeah, we just be kind to one another, and you know, take a load off, relax, spend as much time with your kids as you can, and just try to be the best version of yourself. As lame as that sounds, be the best version of yourself. And if you're not, you know, some days we're thriving, some days we're just surviving. There's nothing wrong with getting out of bed, being like, I just got to get through work and get home. There's nothing wrong with that. Every fitness influencer will tell you got to be the fucking greatest human ever. Just relax. It's not that serious. Life's not that crazy, okay? But yeah, guys, if you want to get in contact with the pod, CoolDadCollective@hotmail.com, or go follow on social media at CoolDadCollective _ on Instagram, or at CoolDadCollective on Facebook and TikTok, guys. Be kind to yourselves, kind to your kids, kind to your wife. Go make dinner, bring some flowers home. You know what it is. Peace.